What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Pi Venus Winslow, is back with us today to talk about creating confidence and trust after childhood narcissistic abuse. Pi is a published author, public speaker, and transformational life coach for those recovering from a narcissistic upbringing. Pi's mission is to empower others to reclaim their authentic selves and live intentionally free from codependency and narcissistic abuse. Welcome back to AVAIYA, Pi.
Thank you, Andy. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, great to see you again. And I'm so excited that we can have another conversation that I know is going to help a lot of people that have been brought up by narcissistic parents. A very, it feels like increasingly common thing I hear about. So let's talk about what are some behaviors of a narcissistic parent?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So I'll highlight some of the bigger ones, probably the ones that more people are going to resonate with or be able to connect with. So narcissistic person is entitled. So they want to be the center of attention. Their wants, needs, and feelings are more important than anything or anyone else. They have a tendency to create drama just so that they can bring that attention back to them. They often demand respect, admiration from their children, compliance, and yet rules do not apply to them. So that can be very, very confusing for a child growing up. They lack empathy for the experience of other people. They don't have remorse for the consequences of their behavior. They have a tendency to deny and minimize and blame and criticize other people. And so they have this persona of perfection. They don't believe that they make mistakes. So that means they cannot take ownership for their behavior. They don't take ownership of their thoughts or feelings either. They blame other people for how they feel. They blame other people for things that happen as a result of their behavior. And when they hurt other people, they don't genuinely apologize. They don't even really acknowledge the experience of another person. So all of those things, they sound pretty awful. And most people would question somebody who behaves that way. But for children who grow up with that being the norm, it can be very, very confusing and it can cause a lot of problems for them, developmentally and then later in life. Another trait or tendency or behavior of a narcissistic parent is they'll lie. So they'll lie to protect this illusion of their perfection. They'll lie to justify their behavior. They'll lie to get their way. They'll lie to hurt other people. They'll lie to control or manipulate, whatever their agenda is. So not really setting a good example there either. And many narcissists have like a Jekyll and Hyde persona. So, on the outside, they give this illusion, an appearance of caring and being like good people. And they can be bold and outlandish. They can be funny, they can be charming, and they can pull people in that way. Or they could be like kind of withdrawn, shy. They can be witty and sarcastic and self-deprecating. And that also kind of pulls people in because then people, they might tend to feel sorry for them or, they might think, oh, well, the self-deprecation, they're a safe person, right? Like they see their own flaws, but it really is just a way to gain trust and emotional connection with other people, because they can just as easily flip that behind closed doors to being controlling, manipulative, and cruel. So
Mhm. Yes, thank you. I appreciate
yeah.
you going through those. Are there any other ones you wanted to mention before we move on?
Well, there's all of that in itself is just emotionally draining. So they don't care about whether the reactions they get from people are positive or negative. They just want to experience the high of controlling somebody else and being in power. And when they lose control, they can go into a rage, they can go into smear campaigns, they will sabotage, they will threaten, they will coerce. So it's this really it's like this unending hunger that can never be satisfied. And I think that's why, so many people who have experienced narcissistic abuse from parents feel like they're never good enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everything you just mentioned, and then thinking about how all of those behaviors impact a child, right? I can't even wrap my head around, right, what that can lead to in someone's life. Obviously, you have your own experiences, and I know so many people do. So let's talk about the impacts, right? Like, how can experiencing these behaviors affect a child and then also show up in their adult life?
Yeah. Well, as you know, thinking about how it could affect someone, I mean, there's a lot of ways that it can affect people. And what it does essentially is when children are growing up, they're on some level, on some subconscious or biological level, they know they must have their parents there to keep them alive. Like we know on some level we can't go out and make it in the world on our own, so we rely and need to attach to our parents. So when that attachment is threatened in some way, which it is often with the narcissistic parent, then our survival instincts kick in. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and if we're constantly being triggered into those survival states, we'll find one, two, three of those things that work in certain situations to keep us alive. So if we go into a fight, if that seems to work, then we may also become aggressive with other people. We may also lack empathy for other people. We may also be harsh and critical and judgmental and intolerant with other people. Or if we run away and flee, like we shrink up inside, we have imposter syndrome, we feel inadequate. I think there's a very large heightened fear of judgment, of rejection, fear of speaking up, or maybe when speaking up very loudly and aggressively, right? We could develop a scarcity mindset, believing that there's never enough time, there's never enough money, there's never enough love, we'll never get what we want. There can be worthiness issues, trust issues. We may even learn that it's not okay to feel good.
Right.
We may learn it's not okay to dream or have aspirations or hopes, because narcissists, with that desire to be in control, can crush a child's dreams really easily, and that can happen very often. That was definitely my experience, and the effects of that is low self-esteem, low self-worth, self-loathing, so shame, and that can lead later in life to things like eating disorders and alcohol and substance abuse, the inability to maintain or create healthy relationships with other people, being people pleasing, codependency. So a lot of effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm thinking also that a lot of people talk about how they develop complex PTSD as a result of childhood trauma like narcissistic abuse. So what ways do you think people can manage triggers as it relates to having PTSD from this kind of upbringing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's, and then really, I think that's key to in the foundation of this recovery journey is learning how to manage the triggers and the PTSD that we've experienced. So some ways that people can do that is learn how to recognize what a trigger feels like in your body. Because a lot of times we get triggered and we don't even realize that's what's happening because it's such a familiar feeling. So maybe that feels normal to us. And so there are feelings in our body that come from being triggered. When our brain, and that survival part of our brain, is tripped, then it sends messages to our body to produce hormones and to change things in biologically in our body, like our heart rate speeds up, the blood rushes to our extremities. We may feel sensations in our stomach or down our spine. We might feel our face flush. We might feel a state of panic. We may feel a state of rage. We may feel afraid. So identifying what it feels like in your body is the first step. And then breathing and like taking a breath and recognizing like the way to calm your body down, the way to tell your brain to stop doing that with your body is to breathe and relax the muscles in your body. Because when we feel threatened, we tense up and we hold our breath. So if we can recognize, oh, I'm triggered, take a deep breath, relax our body. It tricks our brain into believing like, oh, false alarm, there's no threat here. And then our body stops that chemical process. And then the thinking part of our brain can come back online and we can make a better decision about the situation. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when our trigger goes off, that fight or flight survival mechanism is a response to old memories. And that's the classic example of PTSD, right? When the war veteran comes home and they hear a car backfire and they dive under the bushes, they are having a response to a trauma that happened in the past. It's not actually happening in reality. And so when we get triggered by external or internal events, there's a part of us that thinks our survival is in danger. And that's why that happens. So if we can calm our body down and be able to think again, then we can make better choices. Right. And yeah. And so modulating our emotions, meaning like turning them down when they're too high or turning them up if they need to be stronger, being able to do that gives us more control over ourselves and our choices.
Right. Yeah. I like that word, modulating our emotions. And also that you talk about the flip side of it too, not just when our anxiety is super high, being able to breathe and, tap in and relax, but then also if maybe we're not, I guess, like numbing out and not feeling anything, right?
Right. Or speaking up. Like sometimes we need to speak up. And so the survival part of us says, don't speak up.